When I arrived, I had $0 in my account, very junior. And then things like putting a deposit down, I didn't have that money, how to go ahead and pay it.
This is Dominic. He's from Switzerland, but has been living in Singapore for 10 years. As we chatted, Dominic shared with me why Asians like to show off while Europeans don't, whether Singapore could really be called the Switzerland of Asia, and how to get your deposit back from the landlord when renting in Singapore. I'm Max, your favorite YouTuber. Let's go.
Do you remember your first impressions when you moved to Singapore? Let's say your first month here?
Yeah, it was actually a little bit shocking. So before I moved over, never seen anything about Singapore. And my friend at work said, don't worry.
Yeah.
It's like Switzerland, it's a Switzerland of Asia. It's going to be fine. So I arrived quite early in the morning, tried to check into my hotel, and they didn't let me check in. So it was like 3 p.m. check-in. So at the time I said to them, okay, let me just go for breakfast. It's like Zurich, it's like Switzerland. Went out and I couldn't find a place that was open. It was just, Chinese hawkers and roti prata. So I was like, what the hell? Like, people have told me this is like Switzerland. You're going to feel right at home. It's just, roti prata for breakfast. Turns out I booked myself into Chinatown and didn't realize. So it was a bit confusing at the beginning. But you get used to it here, right, quite quickly. It's a very nice place. There's a lot of expats. You settle in within a couple of weeks.
Singapore is called like Switzerland of Asia. Do you see the similarities?
Yeah, I think a lot of, obviously except for the weather, which is much better here. I think, how well the government runs. I think job opportunities, the standard of living is extremely high. Cleanliness as well. So a lot of it compares to Switzerland. Again, Switzerland's even more expensive than Singapore, but apart from that, it's, you feel right at home.
What do you think people in Switzerland know about Singapore?
Not very much. So it's quite interesting when you speak to people in Europe in general. When you say I'm moving to Singapore, to Indonesia, a lot of them just lump it in with China. It's just, they don't know kind of the rest around Asia. It really gets lumped in with, okay, you're moving to Asia, you've gone to China. That's actually, obviously not the case.
What's the biggest differences in people mentality in Switzerland and in Singapore? If you can compare.
Yeah, so I think the Asian culture is a lot more entrepreneurial. I think they're still very much driving towards trying to achieve something versus Europe, which I think has become a little bit stagnant. People are stuck in their 9-to-5s. And you see a lot, especially with the expats coming out here as well, the ones that stay. They want to achieve something, they want to better themselves, they want to, see places, explore places. And you don't get that as much in Europe, I feel. It's become quite stagnant.
And Switzerland is like a lot of very old money, like old, not like just second, third generation. It's like goes back to hundreds of years,
Yeah, so I think you see the wealth much more predominantly in Asia. I think especially first generation wealth or second generation wealth, you see them showing the money, the watches, the handbags, the cars, versus, Europe, it's much more hidden away.
Why think is that? Why people try to show off more here?
I think it's a cultural thing. In Asia, you want to show that you've made it. And it's appreciated in general in the population. People look up to people that have made it. Because again, Asia's really only come up the last 20-30 years. So it's still seen as a positive versus in Europe. When you show your wealth, there's a lot of negativity around it. There's a lot of jealousy around it. So that's why they've become very conservative.
You mentioned that Switzerland is not very entrepreneurial, but there are a lot of businesses there, as we know. But people are not like, let's say, younger generation. They're not driven to start something new, you think?
I feel like less, but it also has a lot to do with the government policies and incentivization, right? So taxes in Europe are generally very high. Again, Switzerland's a little bit better, but the way the policies are put in place, it actually stops people from starting their own businesses. There's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of issues starting a business versus Singapore. You can incorporate your company in a day and that's it, right? You're ready to go. Which is, again, I think, a massive competitive advantage that Singapore has over a lot of other countries.
Yeah, English is great. So actually I have Swiss friends, though normally you guys you speak good English.
Thank you.
But what about Singlish? When you come to Singapore, did you have any oh wow, what's going on? What language do you speak?
It took me a while to learn because people spoke about the Singlish and I was like, I don't hear it because again, everybody speaks good English, but especially, when I play football with the local lads, it comes out and what did they say? I have no clue because they mix it obviously also with Chinese. So it's definitely difficult to understand. But actually my young boy's picking it up.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so he's starting to speak Singlish, which is quite interesting.
He goes to kindergarten?
He goes to, so preschool to kindergarten. Again, quite a mixed group as well, expats and locals, so it's quite nice, all kind of nationalities. But then, through kind of our friendship group, through my wife's friends, he
Yeah.
picks up the Singlish.
Yeah, it's funny, like for our daughter, she's now 6, the older one, she's 6. And she started actually picking up Singlish when she was like 3, around 3. But then actually she transferred to more like universal kind of sound. So now she sounds like, I don't think she sounds like Singlish or American or British. It's just very kind of, there is no particular accent.
And they make
like very
same,
universal.
Same for me, right? So I lived in Spain, I lived in England, I lived in Switzerland, now I live in Singapore. So you pick up a lot of the different accents. Again, you watch American TV shows, you pick up bits and pieces. It becomes quite a universal blend.
Yeah. So basically, what do you do, if you can explain in simple words?
Yeah, so, you know, I think one of the biggest issues I found as an expat is coming to Singapore, like learning about the real estate market, making sure you're actually getting what you're paying for. So it's quite difficult. You know, when I came down to Singapore, as I said, the bank cut my expat package. So they didn't have one. So when I arrived, I had, you know, $0 in my account. I was very junior. And then things like, you know, putting a deposit down, I didn't have that money. So like how to go ahead and pay it again. I was lucky enough that my employer decided to pay for me.
It's a 2-month deposit.
It was 2 months deposit, exactly. So like the main thing we do is really access, you know, for people to real estate. So we do a lot of deposit-free renting. So if you find, you know, a flat that you would like and you actually don't want to pay the deposit, so, you know, either, you know, it's a cash flow issue or mainly you maybe don't trust the landlord, we will actually pay it on your behalf and then, you know, make sure that if there's any issues with the landlord, we take that risk and we help you, you know, be that neutral counterparty between tenants and landlords.
That's actually one of the biggest things that I know people struggle in Singapore, the deposit, how to return your deposit back when you're leaving. I didn't have only positive experience, so basically I think we changed place only once. But
lucky.
I heard stories when people even like they go to a court to get their deposit back.
That's the thing, right? So obviously most landlords are genuine and it's fine. But you get a lot of the landlords that know after 2 years you're going back to Europe, how are you going to get your money back? You can't really go to court, right? So you have to write that deposit off. We've seen that quite a bit with especially expats that take our services. Just, you know, they have the money, it's not a money issue. It's like I just don't want to deal with the landlord and all the issues afterwards once I leave. That's a big part of our customer base. And then obviously a lot of young Singaporeans as well, when they want to move out from their home, you know, the first deposit, how do you rent? Is this landlord really real? Can I trust them? So they just take our services to kind of make that very first step much easier for them.
Any advice for people who never, let's say, never rented in Singapore? Let's say I'm coming to Singapore, I want to rent something nice, but not overpay. I don't know, maybe 3 steps or 5 steps, how to approach this overall, like your advice.
Take your time, find a place with good connectivity. When you found the place, really make sure the people who are helping you, if it's the landlord or agent, are actually who they say they are, right? So there's a lot of databases you can check. It will cost you $2, $3 to actually check. Does the landlord own this place? Is it really his place? Is the agent actually a registered agent? You know, so I think those couple of checks are really important. And then when you move in, like make sure you take a lot of quality pictures of what the apartment looks like, you know, because when you move out and if you're unfortunate enough to have a nasty landlord, anything you haven't documented will be blamed on you. So I think that's really kind of key.
What's the areas in Singapore you would say the most like ROI efficient, the most value for money?
For me, I like the East Coast a lot. Right? So East Coast, again, I myself live in Katong. I like that area, it's up and coming, lots of bars, you're close to the beach. And because it's not that well connected, like they're just building the MRTs now, it's actually relatively affordable. Obviously, Robertson Quay, like where we are now, is obviously much more expensive. But again, it really depends what's the lifestyle that you're looking for, right? If you're, you know, single, CBD is going to be great, get a small apartment, everything's happening there. For me, with a family, East Coast much better. Botanic Garden areas is obviously lovely as well. It's relatively expensive.
But expensive.
Yeah, but we do see more and more people actually move up north towards actually Jurong and Woodlands.
All right.
It's so much more affordable. So again, depends where you work, there's direct lines. But it's a little bit of a pain, right? So especially if you like to socialize or you go out after work, difficult to get home sometimes. So it really depends on what your lifestyle is and what you want to spend. But regardless, it's going to be expensive in Singapore.
What's the price range, let's say, for 2-bedroom units right now?
HDBs can be, you know, $1,000 or something like that. They can be extremely cheap.
Yeah, let's say condos.
Most for 2 bedrooms, I think, you know, you're looking at 4,000 and up. I don't think you can get anything under 4,000. A good tip is if you don't mind so much about facilities. There's a lot of old condos, you know, from the outside, very, very old, but actually inside, fantastic. And they're massive.
It's spacious,
Yeah, so that's usually quite nice. If you're looking for space and you don't need a tennis court or a pool, that's usually pretty good. But then, they go up to, you know, $7,000, $8,000 for a 2-bedroom. The CBDs, easily payable. So it really depends. You know, there's something for every price point, I would say, in Singapore.
For commissions, I think if it's more than some price point, around 5K-ish, you don't have to pay as a tenant, you don't pay the commission to the agent, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple, again, it changed during COVID times, right? Because there was such a short supply of units.
Yes.
So they charged, because it depends a little bit on the model. If there's one agent involved, he will usually just charge the landlord because he's representing the landlord.
Yes.
If there's two agents, then it depends a little bit on, how hot is the market. So if it's a really hot market with few units, the tenant agent will charge you and the landlord agent will charge the landlord because they know they can. If the market's normal, they usually co-broke, so they share the landlord's commission between them 50-50.
Yeah.
It really depends on how the market moves.
Let's say if the market is bad, so your agent will charge you the same amount of 1 month's rental?
So it's usually 1 month per 2 years of lease. So if you have a 2-year lease, you pay 1 month's rent. If you have 1 year lease, you pay half a month's rent. It's quite usual. And then deposit is usually 1 month per year. So if it's a 1 year lease, 1 month deposit. If it's 2 years, it's 2 years. If it's 3 years, it can be 3 months deposit.
Yeah. And most of the contracts are 2 years.
Most of them, right? So usually people via our platform, we see a lot between 1 and 2 years. But obviously, especially if you rent with a co-living partner, which is quite nice, you can rent a shorter 3-4 months. Again, minimum stay in Singapore is 3 months, but it just gives you that flexibility. So especially if you're new to renting, so either you're moving out from your parents' place if you're Singaporean, or you're moving over to Singapore, co-living operator is usually quite a good bet. Because, it's a regulated company, it's a nice apartment, and you have the flexibility to move out pretty quickly again if you don't like the area.
What's the clause in the contract when you can actually exit the contract if you relocate it to some other place?
Yeah, so that's a diplomatic clause.
Diplomatic clause.
Yeah, that's quite unique to Singapore, I think.
Yeah.
So usually, depends on your contract, but usually after 12 months or like half your contract stay, with 2 months notice, they let you leave without paying a fine. Again, if they know you're leaving, they might still keep the deposit, depending on the landlord, but technically, you're meant to be allowed to leave.
Where's the market right now to rent? Is it high? The market is on high?
No, it's coming off now, right? So we had that massive peak last year, which started tapering off, I would say, around summer. So rents are coming off quite a bit. So for people that need to renew, if they can only renew for a year, I think next year they'll actually have much better prices. The supply coming along is really quite vast.
Yeah, actually I have good friends. They decided, so their rent basically, the landlord want to double, more than double actually, more than 100% increase. They used to pay 5.7 for 3-bedroom apartment, very nice one. It was increased 6.3, and then the landlord wanted 14.
Wow,
14K.
okay.
So they actually then end up renting it out for 12, but still like huge, almost twice. And so the guys actually decided to go. It was last March, a year ago.
Yeah,
so
really
they decided to go to France for a few months, just to stay there near the Alps with the parents' house. And so the kids, they go to a local French school, and then they came back in September and they rented. The prices was already better, so they rented better.
Not unheard of, but from 6 to trying to get 14, I think it's a bit cheeky. But I think that's also a difference to Europe, right? You're not allowed to do that to your tenants in Europe.
Yeah.
Like you can't just willy-nilly change your rent to whatever you want. So I think that's kind of the downside maybe about how Singapore is built. It's very entrepreneurial, it's very capitalist, which is great. But then things like that sometimes, can cause a bit of an issue. Again, the governments do try to address, right? So they had the latest budget announcement, so they are giving vouchers, they are trying to help young Singaporeans make renting a little bit easier.
There is no regulation how much you can increase the price. Like in Ireland, I think that it was, if you're existing tenant, the landlord cannot increase the price more than 3%.
Yes, there you go.
For the renewal.
Yeah.
If it's a new tenant, they can do wherever. But for existing tenant, they cannot do that.
Yeah, again, that leads maybe to kind of what I said right at the beginning. Europe is very stagnant, it's not that entrepreneurial, and it is exactly those kind of rules, that makes sometimes investment more difficult, for people saying, look, I want to buy the real estate to rent it out, but then you have all these regulations.
Yeah.
It causes the other side of the issue that maybe it's not going as well as it could do. They're a little bit more liberal in Europe.
Before Singapore, we lived for 3.5 years in Ireland, in Dublin, and it was a huge shortage of places to rent. So basically, you go to some local website, and you have just 10 units. That's it. For in your a price range. It's cruel. You need to stay in a queue, like 10 people in front of you.
Oh, wow.
If the person number 5, they like the place, so they leave deposit, so you just waste your time. In Singapore, there are a lot of places to rent. So basically, the market is very active. The prices are high, but there are a lot of options.
Yeah.
How you see the market compared to, let's say, other markets? Because for sure, you did some researches. So.
Yeah. I think Singapore is a very special market, right? So obviously we had COVID, which caused a lot of delays in building apartments. Then we had a huge inflow from people coming from Hong Kong, which really caused a massive shortage actually of, condos. The prices went up. Some of my friends, they were asked to pay double, for the next 2 years. So that was, quite a tough time for a lot. It caused a lot of my friends and my wife's friends to actually move back to Europe. If we pay double the rent, we just makes no sense to be here. No, but Singapore is a very special market in that, one, there's a lot of fake listings because there's a lot of agents here. So Singapore, they have about 35,000 agents, for a population of really about 1.5 million people actively renting, versus Germany, which is a fraction of that for 40 million people renting. So it caused a lot of competition for units, which again leads them to have a lot of fake listings trying to get these tenants in. And that's kind of where the issues start, right? So especially after COVID, we saw a lot of demand for individual units. So then you had a lot of these fake agents saying, hey, I've got this amazing place, or if you want to see it, you have to pay me the down payment now. Otherwise, we won't even let you see it because the landlord is so busy. For sure it was a scam, right? But the competition got so intense, you have to live somewhere.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of issues around that. I know the government's trying to address a lot of it, but it just takes time. So I think that's very unique here, the amount of scams that actually happen for how secure Singapore should be, right? You feel extremely secure here, everything works. But that's one of the markets that's really just not that transparent yet. So again, we're trying to change.
Fake listings. So basically they put some nice photos online and the price is below the average.
Correct, then, So there's two ways to it. Some of them are actually fake, trying to scam. But the majority is people trying to win business. Agents, for example, saying, look, I don't have a unit, let me list this other one. Then when you want to get the unit, like, oh, actually, sorry, it's already gone, but let me show you another unit.
Yeah.
So it got very competitive here. Again, most agents are obviously, completely legit. They do a great job. It's a job that's much needed. But there's always a small subset, right, that ruin it for everybody. So for us, it's been really like, how can we get rid of that subset? And again, Singapore being Singapore, you've got government IDs, My Info, digital SingPass sign. So we use that to kind of verify people to make sure actually everybody interacting is actually who they say they are, and the unit that they are offering is actually there. Right? Yeah.
Everyone knows like PropertyGuru. Why people should go to Rently versus PropertyGuru?
Yeah, so our premise really is in the time that we are, you have an information overload, right? You go into any property platform and you get 30,000 options, But by the time you filter through, you maybe find 3 or 4 that are actually real and that you like. So our premise is, come to us, every single unit's real, every single unit's verified, and actually every single unit is available. Plus, obviously then, that on top, when somebody rents from us, it's deposit free, so you don't have to pay a deposit, you don't have to deal with the landlord. You're fully insured, so you get home content insurance, the landlord is insured, so really, if you rent via us, it's hassle-free. That's kind of what we're offering, right?
So for deposit, you finance the deposit part?
Yeah, so we just pay the landlord on your behalf, right? When you move out, we get our deposit back. If there's any disputes, again, big thing is when you move out is curtain cleaning, which costs $200 to $300. When the landlord says, look, you've got to pay me $300 to do the curtain cleaning, that's fine with us. We invoice the tenant, everybody's happy. But when the landlord becomes unreasonable, so let's say you move back to Europe, or even still here, and they're like, curtain cleaning is $5,000. That's when we step in, the tenant walks, you rent your next place, and we deal with the hassle.
Yeah. What's the commission of Rently? Like if I'm a tenant, how much I pay you to use your services?
Yeah, so it really depends a little bit. We have a risk model, right, to kind of see who the landlord is, who the tenant is, but usually a couple of % above your rent. So let's say you're paying $5,000 for rent, we might charge you $5,080 or $5,100 a month, and that fee covers kind of everything, including the move-in, move-out service, any of the dispute that you have. So yeah, that's kind of how we thought about it. Like, let's just add a small piece on top of the rent. That kind of pays for us to go through the hassle. And
technically, so monthly rent goes to you and you send it to the landlord?
There's an option for that, which we're rolling out in a couple of weeks' time. So at the moment, the fee is still charged separately. But in the end, what we really want to do is actually, collect on behalf of the landlord, send it to the landlord, we take our fee, and just automate the whole process. Again, also easier for the landlord, right, if he knows he gets paid on time. Again, we're in the middle making sure, people pay, making sure the landlord is keeping his end of the contract, tenant keeping his end. really being a trusted intermediary, right?
How you get the listings? So they automatically transfer from different platforms?
Yeah, so we work a lot with B2B partners. So for example, one of our big partners is Habit, the co-living operator. So obviously they have their systems. It's via API directly onto our platform, which also ensures listings are always fresh, right? So when they take it off their platform because it's rented out, it will disappear with us.
Yeah.
Then we have a bunch of other co-living and large landlords that kind of list with us as well. And again, really that promise of it's a real listing. If you want it, it's available. So we also deal with individual landlords that want to list, and then again, we just verify with the government that they actually own the place and that is actually available. Right?
Can I rent HDB through Rently?
Yeah, you can rent HDB as well. Yeah, there's some regulations, but that's obviously on the landlord to make sure that he keeps. But yeah, you can rent anything you want. So for condos, houses, HDB. Even rooms, like there's a lot of demand for especially young professionals coming over that want to rent rooms.
Yeah.
So like all the co-living operators obviously offer rooms. They're much cheaper as well. If you're 18 or 20 and you come over to Singapore for an assignment, having to pay $5,000 for a condo, probably out of your price range.
Yeah.
So you get really nice furnished places again with our partners like Habit. So you can rent a room much cheaper, about $1,500, $2,000, and you got the expat lifestyle at a fraction of the cost.
If our audience wants to use Rently or try Rently, like download the app, can we give them any special discount or some offer or something?
Oh, for sure, anything for you guys, yeah. We can definitely put a voucher in so they can get a promo code and actually get a discount to our services.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the promo code, can we do it something like Max Chernov?
For sure, for you, for sure.
Okay, great. So we'll leave a link in the description.
Sounds great.
You will have a good luck if you watch the next video right now. The only problem is it will be gone in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.